Welcome to The Heart of the Matter, a podcast that covers legal developments from around the world. I'm your host, Stephen Lai. This podcast is brought to you by Conventus Law. Joining me in this podcast today are partners from Philippines-based law firm SyCipLaw, Rosemary King-Dominguez and John Paul de Leon. We will be having a conversation about the cryptocurrency regulations in the Philippines. Before getting to the heart of the matter, a message from our sponsor who generously supports this podcast.
Ashford Benjamin was founded with the belief that search firms should offer a better service to clients and candidates. This means taking the time to provide a genuine partnership, understanding our clients' and candidates' needs, and proactively advising on the best course of action, utilizing the decades of experience in our industry specialisms, including risk, compliance, business and legal recruitment consultancy, located in central Hong Kong, serving Asia Pacific.
Since the time of recording, the Central Bank of Philippines, the BSP, has announced on Friday, August the 12th, that it is imposing a 3-year ban on licenses granted to virtual asset service providers, VASPs. Welcome to the show, Rose. Welcome to the show, John. How are you?
We're good. Thank you, Stephen, for having us.
Thank you, Stephen, for having us today.
Great to have you. Thank you for being here. In this episode, we will be talking about cryptocurrencies in the Philippines and in particular in relation to regulations. Now, kicking off with you, Rose, what is the current appetite for virtual assets or cryptocurrencies in the Philippines? Can you share your thoughts on how the regulators, cryptocurrency companies, and Philippines consumers feel about cryptocurrencies and virtual assets in your country?
You know, the appetite for crypto here in the Philippines is apparently high. This year, the central bank reported that the volume of cryptocurrency transactions rose, I think, to up to 362% year on year. So quite significant. And there's a global survey that ranked the Philippines number 5 in terms of crypto ownership. And to give you context, Hong Kong ranked 7th, Singapore 12th, the US 26th. So we're in the top 5.
Wow,
So,
that's amazing numbers.
It is. So, you know, if you're talking about FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about crypto, there doesn't seem to be a lot of fear here in the Philippines. But of course, I'm pretty sure the numbers have been affected by a recent dip in crypto prices. Yeah.
I'm sure the cryptocurrency companies are not complaining about those numbers. But what about the regulators? Are they jittery? Because I know from other jurisdictions, they kind of, Singapore, for example, they actively discourage retail investments into crypto. Given the volatility and these high numbers, how do the regulators feel about all this?
In general, regulators here in the Philippines adopt what we call let flourish, then regulate type of regime. So the use of cryptocurrency here in the Philippines is not prohibited. It is in fact allowed, and only a specific activity in relation to crypto assets or cryptocurrencies are regulated. I wouldn't say regulators are specifically jittery about it. Of course, every once in a while, they would remind Filipinos and consumers that it is a very high-risk product and they should approach it with caution. But in terms of regulations, the focus right now is really ensuring that these types of financial products are not used to defeat our anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing laws.
Thank you for that, John. And how about a snapshot, John, of the regulations at the moment for crypto, and what is out there at the moment, and what does it cover?
Maybe I'll start with a little bit of history, right? Our regulators started picking up on cryptocurrency and use of cryptocurrency in 2014. Right. So at that time, all we had was really this policy pronouncement from our central bank that warns people from the use of Bitcoin at that time.
Yeah.
Very specific from the use of Bitcoin because it is not backed by fiat currency and it is a very high risk product. And at that time, what the regulators were trying to do was they were trying to sort of fit into our existing e-money regulations whatever services or whatever activities that can be done using Bitcoin. They were trying to fit it into that mode. So we were in that situation for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And then the central bank issued its first cryptocurrency regulation, which is the virtual currency exchange regulation. So it is a registration and regulatory capture regulation. Right? So all entities that are engaged in virtual currency exchange are required to register with our central bank. And the moment you are given a license, you become a central bank supervised financial institution. And therefore, suddenly all of those regulations for money service businesses and financial institutions apply to you. Right? So that I think that's 2017. 2021, the BSP issued what we now call the Virtual Asset Service Provider Regulation. It's the same as the VCE, the Virtual Currency Exchange Regulations. However, the current regulations were patterned after the Financial Action Task Force guidance on virtual assets and the risk-based approach to managing a virtual asset service provider. So that's what we have now. And what does it regulate? It regulates 4 things, right? It regulates the exchange of fiat currency to virtual currency and vice versa. It regulates the exchange of virtual assets with other virtual assets. It regulates settlement and administration activities related to virtual assets. And it also regulates custodian activities in relation to virtual assets. So apart from those 4 aspects, all other activities surround or use cases, if I may say, surrounding cryptocurrencies, that's currently, that's like the wild west, unregulated here in the Philippines, but allowed but unregulated.
Well, not specifically regulated might be a more accurate.
I have a lot of empathy for the regulators. It's so fast and so new, right? It's so hard to get in front of it, isn't it? I'm sure there's a lot more to come because, you see different jurisdictions are doing different things. But I think essentially it's really about trying to control the exchanges, it would appear. I mean, it's quite common, say in Singapore, Hong Kong and other jurisdictions, the focus seems to be very much on the exchanges, the cryptocurrency exchanges. Would that be fair? Is that what Philippines are trying to do?
Yeah, I think when you look at the licensing framework here, and maybe to backtrack a little bit, some people are wondering, you expressed surprise earlier, right? That there was so much appetite for crypto here, and the pundits say that one of the reasons is they feel that the regulatory framework for crypto here in the Philippines is relatively straightforward, but it really means in terms of this licensing requirement. The government agency has figured, okay, I'm going to regulate trading and exchange, and so that's what I'm going to concentrate on, and that is fairly straightforward, that particular aspect.
What does the future hold, though? What about as things go on? We're not even talking about NFTs in this podcast. There's all these different things popping up all the time, and who knows what's just around the corner. How do you think the future holds for regulations? Are they proactively planning more regulations in this space in the Philippines?
Maybe I'll talk about what we know is being planned. Right. And then maybe Rose can talk about the broader look into the crystal ball type of prediction. So what do we expect? Well, as I said, the current regulations are patterned or closely tied with the FATF guidelines, and the FATF recently just issued updated guidelines. So the expectation, at least among lawyers that practice in this field, is that the central bank will make moves to either introduce additional regulations or amend the existing regulations in order to sort of bring us again closer to the updated guidance. That's with respect to the central bank. The central bank, of course, wants to sort of move towards financial technology and digitization in the broader scheme. So we also expect a lot of regulations on risk management, operational and systemic risk management. Of course, these regulations would apply broadly to all central bank supervised financial institutions, including those that operate cryptocurrency or virtual asset exchange. Right? There's another regulator, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and basically it regulates the issuance, trade, and sale of securities here in the Philippines. So that area of regulation vis-a-vis cryptocurrencies, that's not yet very clear, and we do expect the Securities and Exchange Commission to sort of take on that task in the near future. There are draft regulations for digital asset exchanges and initial coin offerings that have been the Securities and Exchange Commission have been working on for quite some time, right? For quite some time now. The optimistic expectation is that it will be finished and it will come out this year. So that's 2023.
All right. So we are already expecting more things to happen already. Is that right?
Yes, and that's just in the near term.
Last question for this episode. Maybe I'll ask you, Rose. We know, obviously, in the last 12 months, speaking to you guys in the Philippines and other law firms in the Philippines, is that we know there's a big effort in the Philippine government to encourage foreign direct investment. Previous administration been quite proactive on that. And obviously this year, the eyes of the world were on the Philippines when you got a new administration coming in. Is it very much the same? I mean, what have they said about what are the current plans and what have they said about cryptocurrencies? Because I know obviously with those numbers, it could make a big difference, on the wider narrative of getting more foreign direct investment.
Yeah, definitely FDI is still very important. Digital economy, digital transactions, fintech still at the forefront. And really, there's no choice, right? I mean, there's no going back. There's no going back. You have to just push forward. Even as there is that drive and impetus to go forward, including on crypto, one of the interesting things, and here this is where, you have to really sort of monitor the regulations. They're going to come, it's going to happen. The Philippines is going to try to track what other jurisdictions are probably doing by way of regulations. But the interesting thing for us is that our new central bank governor, Philip Medalla, he used to be the Department of Finance Secretary under the Estrada administration, I believe, if I recall correctly. Well, he has said in an interview, you can Google it, you can find the interview. He says, we're not banning crypto, but he made it very, very clear he's not a big fan. In fact, he goes down and talks about cryptocurrency. Well, first of all, he says, you can't call it cryptocurrency because you can't use it for payments, which is, a bit at odds, right, with the underlying policy that started this in the Philippines. You can't call it cryptocurrency because you can't use it for payments. You have to just call it crypto assets. And then he goes as far as saying that, one thing that it's really good for is to avoid monitoring by government. So I mean, this is the perspective of the head of our central bank. I think he's going to have to live with fintech. Obviously, he has to live with fintech, and he will. And he's going to have to live with crypto because we are number 5 in the world. There's lots of crypto things going on in the Philippines, but you can really expect, I think, that it may not be as fast or as aggressive, maybe the regulations that will come, and definitely all the focus, I think, will be on, as JP mentioned, risk monitoring, restrictions, guidelines. anti-money laundering issues. So I think that's going to be the focus of our regulation.
That sounds actually quite sensible. It would appear from the Philippines perspective, it does appear to be quite sensible move because we are talking about anti-money laundering and making sure you're assessing the risks and making sure the regulation's right. So I think if you do that, then you might end up with a sort of best-in-class regulations for crypto. And in the long
Hopefully.
term, that'll work out better, actually, doesn't it, for FDI?
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's where we're headed.
I hope it's all going to be successful in the future too, obviously. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you very much for joining us. And I look forward to speaking to you two next time.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, listeners, for listening. And I look forward to talking to you on our next episode.